Hey guys, welcome back. So now we're getting into Karen Gillan's Avengers X-Men Eternals Judgment Day. And man, this event is starting off with a bang. Literally. So let's get into it. But first, if you're new to the channel, be sure to subscribe to catch the spills every week. And don't forget to hit that bell up top so we can squat up in the comments for the first hour. Alright, so the way that this starts off, we begin with Tony and Cersei, who are having a meeting because Tony, he's got some questions. And keep in mind that this meeting is right next to the Krakoan treehouse in New York. Like, right next to it. But also on the surface, this may seem like a bit of a date, since Tony has expressed his attraction to Cersei before, and his shirt is unbuttoned, so you know the vibes. But instead, this is set up to be quite similar to their lunch date in Karen Gillan's Eternals issue 5, when at the time Cersei used Tony as bait and shut down his nervous system in order to get the Forgotten One to show up, to where then she gave Icarus the signal to swoop in and get the guy. So kind of keep this in mind as well as we start this off. Because it's here where Tony's like, hey, let's just cut to the chase. Why are we going to be fighting in the next day or two? To where then Cersei, she switches it up, saying how she'd be much more likely to pick a fight with the mutants since they copied the Eternals' whole flow, with them now using immortality. And it's here as soon as Tony says that she's not going to make this easy, to where then she admits that she isn't, and right then she's just swooped up by the Phoenix. Cause that's how karma works. But it's here that we quickly find out that this was all just a setup for the Avengers to bring Cersei in for interrogation. And for good measure, they brought in Thor, Captain Marvel, and the Phoenix to do so. But back on the ground right next to where this had happened, we then jump over to the treehouse where Cyclops is looking like, what they doing over there? But with him seeing the Phoenix, he expresses how it feels odd to see the Phoenix as an Avenger. But if we're being honest, the Phoenix has been odd since Avengers vs. X-Men. But even still, I get what he's saying as far as the Phoenix being an actual Avenger. But with Scott mentioning this to Jean, she didn't much notice it because she was distracted by the protesters below. Because with the word being out that mutants have immortality, this has caused a lot of humans to go into uproar. And sure, you got some humans who never liked mutants anyway, so of course they don't want mutants to live forever, but then you have some who are just heartbroken because it's exclusive, like one woman who'd lost her daughter, and because her daughter wasn't a mutant, she'll never get her back. And that's just the way it is for normal people. And with Jean bringing this to Scott's attention, his response is very practical because the Five can't bring back everyone, even if the mutants wanted them to. But on top of that, it's not as if anyone has done anything about mutants being killed, which was the primary problem before they discovered immortality. But after this, we then jump to Krakoa, which at this point has a population of 200,000, and it's here where we find Destiny telling the others that there will be a war. And initially she's not sure as far as who it's coming from, even though she knows it's not Orcus, but they are ready. And soon after this, Destiny discovers that it's the Eternals. The Eternals are going to try to kill them all. So right away, Mystique and Destiny, they go to warn the Quiet Council, while Nightcrawler heads to planet Arakko to warn Storm, Magneto, and the others. But with Nightcrawler heading to Arakko, the planet formerly known as Mars, which at this point has a population of 1 million. But before we go any further, we gotta take a step back and talk about this for a second. Because during Planet-Size X-Men issue 1, when Storm, Magneto, Iceman, and a few others came together to terraform the planet, they had then used the external gate to bring the island Arakko from Earth to Mars. And within the galactic political stage, planet Arakko was soon after made the capital of the Sol system. And of course, with this happening, Dr. Doom shows up, questioning all of this, asking who rules this new planet, who's the king of Mars, who speaks for Sol. And immediately after, he got the answer to all that. And it was Storm, Storm, and Storm. Or Hodari Yao, which is Storm. Which was a rather satisfying moment. But with Nightcrawler coming to Arakko to inform them on the war coming with the Eternals, he lets them know that the Quiet Council is getting ready to meet in the Great Ring on Arakko, which is like their version of the Quiet Council. They need to be informed as well. To where from there, Magneto says a Storm will give Arakko's perspective to Krakoa, while Kurt and himself take the issue to the Great Ring. But then it's from here where we jump over to Avengers Mountain, where we find that Tony has brought Cersei to a psychic dead room so that he can interrogate her without her messing with his mind again, or calling for help. But with him doing this, Cersei wastes no time reminding Tony that she's a minor psychic and a world-class matter manipulator, so if she wanted to kill Tony, she could do it in the blink of an eye. And of course, with trust between the Avengers and the Eternals being the issue here, Tony quickly lets her know like, yeah, with her saying that, it doesn't help. But Cersei, she's just like, okay, just get on with it. Show me a little PowerPoint and hopefully this will convince me to help you out. And right there, Tony's like, well, it's not a PowerPoint, okay? It's my own bespoke system that uses AI generated fades to, you know what, forget it. Last month, you Eternals snuck into Avengers Mountain. How about we start there? Like, you could tell that hurt just a little bit. But Tony brings up how the Eternals snuck into Avengers Mountain to do some cosmic stuff, and Tony expresses that he understands the idea of a hero doing something sketchy and saying, hey, this needed to be done. And for the Eternals, it wasn't until their plan went sideways where they came out and told the truth. As far as Thanos being on Earth and leading the Eternals, as well as the Earth being minutes away from destruction as a result, and she says she regrets that as if it were just some mistake. And she tells Tony that there are some things that only the Eternals can know, which then has Tony like, oh, y'all just hiding another doomsday, huh? And she tries to flip this around by telling Tony that he should tell her what he knows. So from there, she can determine what she wants to share to help them out. And it's right there with hearing this that Captain America's like, okay, this isn't working, and he steps in. And when this happens, Iron Man of course warns Cap that he's not protected in here because Cersei's an untrustworthy psychopathic telepath. Stick to the plan. And I mean, he didn't say it like that, but he's telling Cap, he's warning him that he's not protected in here. But Cap tells Tony that Cersei was once an Avenger, so they have to show her trust. And when Cap tells her that the Eternals are going to war, tell us what you know, she initially jokes about it, but when she sees the seriousness in Cap's face, she then realizes that Druig had done something. And it's here where Tony lets her know that ever since he had found out that they were hiding Thanos, he had taken data from the recent confrontation after the Eternals had snuck in to track for anything that felt eternally. And this brought to his attention just a week ago a huge spike in the Pacific Ocean that cut out instantly, as if someone was testing something. And of course, Cersei points out that a lot of people use celestial energies, so it doesn't necessarily mean war. And she goes on to let Cap and Tony know that whatever it is, she's not a part of it, because the Eternals aren't like an entire team, they're a society, and a society that her and her friends had left, which in reference, this points back to them discovering about their immortality, and a handful of them going to the Deviants in Lemuria to try to find a way to change, since Eternals can't change on their own. But again, Cersei doesn't give them all those details, because she's all about the minimum coverage right now. And all she really tells them is that she's not the Eternal that they need to be worried about. And it's from here where we then jump back 1 hour over to Olympia, where we find Druig seeking the approval of the Unimind to correct the excess deviation that is mutants. And he makes the case that they've missed this deviation before, but with their X gene coming from deviants, this makes mutants and deviants the same. And at this point, they've deviated by leaving the Earth, which is the Great Machine, and colonizing on Mars, as well as escaping the chains of death, which means that their excess deviation will go on forever. And this leads to the Prime Eternal Druig getting a unanimous approval from the Unimind. But it's also from here where I want to get into what we'd seen in The Eve of Judgment Day, issue 1, because it's here where we see Druig's first attempt, with him going to Domo, who's constructed an antimatter bomb which they attempt to use to destroy Krakoa. But because their second principle is to protect the machine, and the machine is essentially the Earth, and Krakoa falls into the lines of being part of the Earth, this then backfires on them because destroying Krakoa breaks the second principle, which also in a way makes Krakoa a part of the machine, which is rather interesting. But then for Druig, after experiencing this failure, while he's here in the exclusion, this then causes him to realize that if he wants to commit genocide, that he needs to go to the Eternal that does it best, who's also the first Eternal to be locked away in the exclusion, Uranos, the grand uncle of Thanos. Or better yet, grandfather, because Thanos, you know, he switched it up too. So it's grandfather now. But Druig makes Uranos a deal, giving him 1 hour to go on a killing spree. And Uranos is confident that that is more than enough time for him to do some damage. Because in the same way it takes 9 months to make a human who can be killed in seconds, he's going to take that principle and his wrath to the planet Araco, which was made in a day, and he's going to make use of that 1 hour. And Druig is rather tight on the time restriction because he's made sure that the machine is programmed to bring Uranos back in precisely 1 hour. And then after this, we then head over to a meeting between Druig and Moira McTaggart, who at this point in time, Moira, she's with Orcus. And this really just stems from what we'd seen, where Mystique had the whole get Destiny back or burn this place to the ground thing going. To where then later Destiny came back, which shouldn't have been possible because Moira requested for Destiny's DNA and backups to be destroyed. But with Mystique posing as Charles, she later used the 5 to bring back Destiny. And during Inferno, while Mystique was doing this, she had Hope complete the process since the real Charles wasn't actually there. But nonetheless, with Destiny actually coming back and then getting voted on the Quiet Council, this of course pissed off Moira, in addition to the fact that Magneto refused to kill Destiny. And when this happened, this is where Moira took a turn, because the same way that Mystique had felt like she wanted to burn everything to the ground if Destiny can't come back, And now Moira, she wants to burn everything to the ground because Destiny did come back. And that's pretty much the long and short of it, because Moira feels like she gave the mutants everything and they cast her out. But also at this current time, Moira, she's with Orcus, and she lets Druig know that Orcus is on the same side, pro-human, anti-mutant. And in this conversation, anti-mutant or anti-deviant, it's potato. And really from here, Moira, she just gives Druig the inside scoop on Krakoa and the mutants' infrastructure. And with this happening, the next thing we see as soon as we jump over to the Quiet Council, who at this point are figuring out what they're gonna do as far as this upcoming war with the Eternals. And before you know it, boom, they're hit with a psychic attack from the Unimind, which is just nuts, because to the naked eye, this doesn't look like anything. But to the telepaths on the Quiet Council, it just got real. But also with this attack, it provokes the idea of what could be an indirect attack on the island of Krakoa, since the island passively feeds off of a harmless amount of telepathic energy. But nonetheless, with this happening while Druig is explaining this to Moira, he lets her know that this is being done to keep the leaders distracted and create confusion. But then Moira lets Druig know that the telepaths are not all of Krakoa, and that he's gonna need to do a bit more. And it's here where he tells her that he's deployed his stealth resources, equipped with armor from their earliest days, to attack the mutants on the island. And with this happening, the mutants from New York, they make their way from the treehouse down to Krakoa to help out. And Druig mentions that he didn't bother to destroy any of the other doors to try to keep the others from coming, because then they would have lost the element of surprise, and magic, she would have gotten them there anyway. But while this is going on, we then go to Araco at the Great Ring while they're having their meeting. And out of nowhere, you just see this bright light. And a second later, Nightcrawler's bamfing, telling everyone to get out. Meanwhile, back in Krakoa, Wolverine is the first one to sniff out what's actually going on. Because while the other mutants outside are being attacked from above, someone else is inside picking off the members of the Five, only to then head next for the Quiet Council, and many of whom are frozen and defenseless because they're fighting off the attack of the Unimind. But Wolverine discovers that it's Jack of Knives that has snuck down here and already killed Egg, a member of the Five, because Wolverine smelled Egg's blood on Jack's knife. Because otherwise Wolverine wouldn't pick this up, much like how Jack snuck in the first time and found out about the resurrection to begin with. And we find that Wolverine, he gets in here just in time to save Hope. But shortly after this, in what seems to be a failed assassination attempt, all these guys then retreat, and then from here we go over to Arbor Magna, to where fortunately Egg has made a few more eggs so that he could be resurrected, and shortly after they start bringing back the others as well. But while they're here, Kurt then drops in, and it's here where he gets them caught up on what happened on Araco. And all we see from here is just the wake of destruction, with Uranos counting down from his 1 hour, getting ready to make his way back to the exclusion. And as far as what we're shown with what's left of Araco, this place is just a graveyard, with nothing left but bones, dust, and smoke. And with seeing this is here where we follow Uranos back to the exclusion, where we find Druig waiting for him, just talking like, hey, how's the trip? But when Uranos gets here and he hears Druig say, at least I could count on you. And right away this lets him know that Druig's other plan had failed. And Uranos is kind of like, man, just let me out, I'll handle everything. But Druig knows better, and he's like, it hasn't gotten that bad just yet. But just off of Druig expressing this alone, it lets Uranus know that he's gonna be let out again at some point. But just after this, Tony sees that there's an attack on Krakoa, as well as an alert for those energy spikes that he saw before, which is then followed by a message that goes out to everyone's electronic device in the world. And it's here where we find that it's Druig broadcasting to all the humans, and he tells them that he's doing this through their devices because he wouldn't use telepathy like a mutant would. Ew. But he sends out this message to let all the humans know that the mutants are a threat and the Eternals are gonna handle it. To where then he tells them, oh, by the way, don't be alarmed by these towering death machines. They're called the Hex, and they are also Eternals. And he lets the humans know that be assured, whether large or small, the Eternals are their protectors. And from here, when we go back to Avengers Mountain, it's here where Cap fills the others in, as far as Cersei telling him and Tony that her and her friends have left the Eternals, but she didn't say why. And at a moment's notice, they then get another Eternal alert, to where right away Tony goes to check it out, and come to find out it's Ajax and Makari, along with the kidnapped Mr. Sinister, who they had commandeered around the time when they discovered that their plan was possible. And she explains her plan to Tony by telling him that this is a holy war, born of holy scripture. A god can rewrite the scripture and end the war. So all they have to do is simply build a god. And with hearing this, Tony's pretty much like, yeah, that's ridiculous, but keep going. And he's curious to know, with everything going on right now, how are they going to make a god in a few hours? And it's right here where Ajax tells them that they have everything that they need, because they're pretty much standing inside of one. So you already know from here that it's about to go down. And so now real quick, I want to give a special shout out to all the patrons. Thank you guys for all of your support. And for anyone who's new here who wants more information on how to support the channel, I got a link below so we can go to patreon.com/dopespill. But that'll do it for this one, guys. Let me know your thoughts down in the comments below, and we'll do it again in the next one. Alright, later.